open the public hearing on TIF 4. Jim has a couple things to inform us.
Yeah, just as a reminder, we've been working on this project with the GLC EDC regarding the Even Glow property and the block surrounding it to the east. With us tonight, we have our consultant from PGAV Planners, John. I don't want to even destroy your last name, sir, but he will come up and go over the plan and hit the highlights. John?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
With a last name like Brian Caglione, that's why they call me John B. at my office. In fact, I'll tell you a story. When we first set up our email, it kept throwing up on my last name because it had too many letters. So I'm the only one in our entire firm whose email is john.b. Okay. As Jim pointed out, I want to just hit a few things so that for the purposes of the hearing record, we have all this in there. The project area covers 7.62 acres of land if you include rights-of-way, or about 4.7 acres if you exclude the rights-of-way, and as he pointed out, it's across 2 city blocks that include 7 total buildings, the Even Glow facility and the health center facility. And of course, as you all know, the Even Glow facility, the lodge is a 7-story building, so it's quite a substantial structure. It's been vacant for over a year, and there's a significant presence of asbestos and absence of fire sprinkler systems, so the building can't be utilized any longer for its original purpose. The second city block has a parking lot and a garage for the Even Glow facility. There are 3 vacant properties, a dwelling that's been converted to commercial / office use, and the Jones House Historic Home and Museum. The Section 2 of the tax increment plan defines the areas and the qualifications for an area designation, and there are multiple designations, and I'm not going to go through all of those. I'll talk in a minute about the ones that are pertinent to this project. But there is the definition, the criteria and definition for a blighted area. That's 13 criteria, but then there is a separate set of criteria for vacant land under that definition, and then there is conservation area. The main difference there between conservation and blighted is that 50% of the buildings have to be 35 years old or older. So this area qualifies under all of those criteria, and Table A that was in the redevelopment plan, or the qualifications plan and the redevelopment plan, which are combined, shows how those qualifications are met, both in total number per item and percentage of the overall area. A TIF area has to qualify on the whole, and so while there may be properties within an area that don't meet a qualifying factor, it has to have predominance in the overall area of those factors. So it meets the criteria for age. It meets the criteria on deterioration for improved property. It has declining or subpar EAV growth. I'll come back to that in a minute. and excessive vacancies, and structures that are below minimum code standards and are obsolescent. And also meets the finding on environmental cleanup, since a building like that, which is that large, where there's a high factor of asbestos, for example, that in and of itself is a factor, and it also complicates the process of either redeveloping a building like that or something like that down, and there's a lot of asbestos in the building. You just can't let the stuff fly everywhere. The comparison of EAV growth, the redevelopment area, that is, growth rate has been less than the balance of the city on 3 of the 5 occasions, and it has been, its growth rate has been less than the consumer price index, also for 3 out of the 5-year window that you have to test. The redevelopment plan and project, of course, is an attempt to create a new use for that building. And Jim, you may know more about this than I do, or you and Adam have had conversations. Not this Adam Stroud. You're anticipating working with a private developer to redevelop that building, the Evenglow building?
That's correct, yes.
Which will be an expensive proposition, I might add. I've had lots of experience with redeveloping older buildings like that with those kinds of issues. And creating a mixed-use development with higher density residential and potentially some office and retail or dining space, and would include the redevelopment of the adjacent block to the east to support that overall development idea. If we go later in the document, and I don't know whether you all have reference copies over there or not, the estimated redevelopment project costs are in Table C and on page 21. The biggest of those is public works and improvements, is building rehab and retrofit. The second biggest is public works or improvements, and then followed by what are likely to be interest costs incurred by the developers, but those are capped at 30%. The total estimated redevelopment project costs are $7,876,000, and those numbers have a certain fix on them relative to the statute, so those costs cannot be increased by more than 5% after adjustment for inflation from the date of the plan adoption, and that's per subsection, can't talk tonight, 1174.4.5 of the Act. Now, the dollar amounts between line items can be moved around. So, for example, if public works costs are less than the amount shown, they can, and building rehab and retrofit goes up, you can move from one line item to the other. You simply can't exceed that overall total. Just for comparison, the EAV trends in the area, the redevelopment area has had a 7.1% decline between 2018 and 2023. The consumer price index between those time periods went up 4.1%, and the balance of the city in terms of EAV, in other words, the city EAV minus the project area, went up 6%. So this property is a declining asset to all of the taxing districts, not to mention its vacancy and simply sitting there as a very large property. The legal description is included, and there are photographs in the back of the plan that are a sampling of all the photographs that were taken, but basically intended to show the typical issues associated with this two-block area. Any other questions or something else I can add? Thank you.
Do we have?
Yeah, do we have any questions from the public?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
One, how do you consider the block with the Jones house and one other house blighted or conservation?
That,
They have new buildings.
the Jones house, yeah, but on that block is also the parking, there's
And a
vacant
garage.
land there that's not being used, there's the, what we're calling the Parrot construction house.
Knocked down one residence
So there's
that
a,
people were living in.
right, which makes
And
that
even though
vacant.
it wasn't vacated until during COVID, after COVID.
Okay.
So it wasn't always vacant. for
Right.
all of those years.
Correct.
We live in TIF that was set up in the 90s. Our one block was added. It was considered blighted and conservation. They went through all of this. There were residences on the block. The city tore down one of the residences to set up a parking area which has never been established since then.
Talking about the west end of that block, across from the library? Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. It was purchased by Ethan Blow, I believe.
Correct.
But it was never used for the purpose that was intended when we set up the TIF. We've been paying the TIF, which is, what happens. Sometimes 50% of our tax money goes into the city's TIF. There have been no improvements or any infrastructure on our block.
Okay,
With the exception of the sidewalk that we paid for this.
and I think there was some street repair to the east of,
Yeah, but I don't,
But
it's not
we're not
required
even-
that we spend money on every single property in the
Right.
TIF. You know, the TIF was a very
Right.
large area, TIF 1 was a very large area.
But you're told that the infrastructure in this area is going to be improved, if that's something that's considered to be blighted or conservation. And under blighted, I mean, there are things that people were living in those houses, we had decided 2 years before we were put in. You know, it's just sort of, it's hard to trust what you're saying is destruction of deterioration of these properties when we've been living in them, and the block's been living in them, and nobody's really changed.
yeah, so, but there's a difference between meeting a code for blighted and what someone else might consider blighted.
We met a code for.
Right, and so like you're talking about with your tax money going into the TIF.
That's fine.
Well, yeah, the TIF is the increment from when the baseline was established,
I
right?
understand, but
And
50%
so
of our
if your property didn't increase in value, then the majority of that is gonna be
the
what you would call going
50%
into the
of it
TIF.
has been going into, has not been going into the public schools or the public library or any of the other taxing bodies. that's my objection. Now, for Even Glow,
But
they haven't been.
but I do want to
taxed.
mention though that the TIF does
Supplement.
fund the schools.
Not to the percent, not to the amount that they would be getting to the tax money.
Actually, we do.
We do.
It wasn't originally.
Yeah, but we
It
do.
wasn't originally,
Yeah.
maybe now, but the library isn't being funded. And they're
Correct.
not going to be getting more money. If you develop those properties, they don't get more money
Until the TIF
it
ends.
expires, yeah. So that's not going to increase any of the taxing bodies.
Well, except in the fact, like for the library, for example, if this is residential, then there's more persons capable of joining the library, utilizing services, buying their books at their, and spending money. So, yeah, and then when the TIF closes, then all that money goes back to the taxing bodies. But you can't do it if you can't do any rehab, if there's no money to do any sort of rehab, then they're never going to see anything but decline. If that makes sense, that if we do nothing and Even Glow continues to deteriorate and they don't, and no money is ever put into
For
that,
this specific year.
yeah, right, and that's what we're talking about, is the TIF 4, not the TIF 1. So if nothing is done, then, you know, the odds are that no one's gonna come in and spend their money and do something to that building. Even Glow, it obviously is looking to sell it, so they're not interested in redeveloping it themselves. It's just gonna continue to deteriorate. And the costs of rehab are probably going to continue to increase. So the option then is if, yeah,
We understand all
yeah, right,
We don't test better than a lot of people here.
sure,
Because we've been living with it.
yeah,
Well, the problem is, Even Glow, when we moved in, was a great community neighborhood.
yeah,
There were events there, it went both ways. We had people walking from Even Glow around our neighborhood, walking downtown, they would come and stop at our yard, and we would go there, and they would have events there. I spoke to members there several times. It was our polling place. It was a nice central place. Our concern is that the neighborhood is going to be forgotten in the whole planning aspect. And because we've already witnessed it, because it was a couple of years ago, when the first plans came for Even Glow, we were told, oh, there was a focus group. Oh, community members were involved. A total lie. Nobody was involved in any planning outside of Even Glow. Nobody was. There was no public announcements. It was the first that we had heard of it. So what we'd like is to yeah, we'd love to see it develop. I brought plans to the council members 2 years ago about the visions I had. But what we'd like to see is the whole area developed, not just one thing. You know, they took, Even Glow over the years, took 5 or 6 residential properties off of their taxes. For what? And none of them was approved, or, you know, unless you call mowing grass an improvement. You know, there has to be no improvement. We'd like an improvement, we want to see it. But we want to see it in a way that does benefit the community, because we've been living there, and to bring more people in. That's all that we're saying. And,
Yep.
you know, there are a lot of really vague things here right now.
well, there's, I mean, and obviously, I mean, number one is, we don't know, I mean, I couldn't sit here and tell you that just because we've had talks about a potential development, that's gonna happen. And so, however, if there is no incentive that can be given, we're never going to have any sort of development there. So, the reason why this is coming before the council and for this public hearing is that we are also running up against a deadline to maximize any type of incentive that we might be able to collect and offer for this. And that being, because this property is no longer being utilized for its intended purpose, it will go back on to Even Glow on the tax rolls as a dilapidated building, and then there will be tax generated from that. That will go out to the taxing bodies. the purpose of catching this TIF prior to that happening is then when that happens, that goes into the TIF. And so it is able to be collected at a greater rate development. That's why. So if we wait till after the assessor puts the assessment back on even glow, and then we open a TIF, we're starting at a base EAV from here rather than from down here.
But do you understand that what we're trying to say is, we understand you have a deadline too.
Yeah.
But there have been promises made or plans made for things that never occurred. So
Yeah.
we're very doubtful about, we understand that a developer has to determine something.
Sure.
But is there security in the people here that are determining some of this to make sure that certain things are going to be dealt with, that infrastructure will be dealt with, that those kinds of things that can be improved in the area to help the community around it will be done?
Sure, and I
It's going to
think,
be single-sided, which a lot of things have happened to be.
yeah, and I think though, while there's always some uncertainty with any type of a comprehensive plan, there is also a pretty wealthy body of evidence to show positive things that have happened in the TIF 1 and the TIF 2. Wally's development is a pretty significant addition to TIF 2. You'll see the ambulance substation coming out there in the TIF 2. The money that's been spent in the central business district downtown to rehab buildings is extremely significant. You're $30-40 million of repairs that have all taken place to businesses, private businesses in downtown. So, and not to mention that every year there is a budgeted in the TIF district infrastructure project that we discuss every year. That's part of the capital improvement plan. So you see Mill Street Bridge, the work that was just done there, and the road there to get that road. That is a this year example. Early next year, you'll see this parking lot out here. This is a TIF project for making it more accessible, more ADA friendly, more compliant for residents to utilize their government, as well as some improvements that are happening behind the public safety complex. So every year there are a number of improvements that happen in the TIF district, and they're all outlined in the budget. And we can go through all of those and show, yeah, there are times when a project might get budgeted and then doesn't happen. That happens because potentially a bid might come in that's higher than what was budgeted for, or, I mean, there's a number of reasons why that can happen, but every year we release a TIF report that details what all the money was spent for. It's given to the state comptroller, so available to everyone online. So, I mean, it's, without the TIF, nothing is going to happen over there. And unfortunately, the game is that there are also no guarantees of what will happen there. And if there were to be a use that was outside of what we were hoping, then yeah, we'll have to come back together through committees, and the council will make decisions on what is going to be best use of that TIF. So, but the benefit that it will also share right now is its location, where it is, it does come up against the border of the TIF 1. So if there are some incentives that can help move that project along, money can pass between the two TIFs for that. So, which would all be right in your neighborhood. So that would be a significant.
Our block was part of it.
Yeah.
I understand, but if you look at the TIF map, there's a giant block, and I'm guessing strategically at the time, areas are chosen that are going to help fit criteria, because if you don't meet the criteria to become a TIF, then you're not going to be able to gain the increment. And so that increment is what, I mean, that area is big. And as we've talked about in our discussions before, like, just a rehab of a city block can be $150,000 for a street that you're not going to, I mean, you're going to go through a lot of money really fast, faster than you're going to gain it through TIF on being able to do that. So
The groundwork that TIF brings us will allow us to move forward. Like so many things, when you build up, you have to start at the bottom.
Can I just check? I have been told when I talk to council people in the past, so I want to check with people who are here. Do you realize TIF is tax money?
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, because I've been told that it's not, and I actually had to take my tax bill and copy it and highlight the TIF money and send it to council.
I think the biggest confusion that we get is either that or that it's a new tax, in which it is not a new tax either. It's, you're paying your regular property tax based on the assessment that the county provides, and wherever that baseline was established, any tax above that goes to the TIF instead of to all the other taxing.
I learned that
Yeah.
many years ago.
Right.
A lot of people-
And for the last 10 years, the school districts have been supplemented to equal anything that would have lost to the TIF.
Well, not
So-
anymore.
The last 10 years they have, for sure. So anyhow,
Well, it's been a lot more years than
yeah. Well,
but that's good.
yeah,
For sure, yeah. I mean, a lot of good things have come from those
from there.
rehabs for their schools as well.
Okay.
And
Anything
guys, you know, if it goes back on the tax rolls next year and Evanglo starts getting a tax on a vacant building, then their motivation is how many years of tax bills do we have to pay to cover the demolition? And then it would be looking at another big hole there. So we're trying to avoid the hole. That's, I mean, that's the very gist
We
of it.
understand that, we understand that.
And this is the, I helped form the 1986 TIF. You know, I went through that map and house by house and assessed my assessment with Bob Carls as we drew that map and that description of that property. And we went through the state audit on it and they certified the TIF after the fact. So it was done, but it doesn't necessarily, each property, each block isn't necessarily going to get the spending. You still prioritize within that TIF what's going to improve the community the most. It's within the capabilities of the TIF.
Okay.
So even though your sewer may be working, so it didn't get replaced, some of the downtown sewers that weren't working well right in front of my office, they put new sewer in. Opperman did that many years ago. So there's a lot of improvements there. So, and it's,
Understand that the whole community, good for the whole community.
Correct.
and,
We
and
just like, you know,
it's like, think of It's a Wonderful Life, Ed. You know, if we didn't have the TIF, what would this look like with all of our Route 116 or taxes? Just try to picture what it might look like, what the downtown might look like. And, you know, I've watched the council, I'm the only, I think I'm the only one left maybe that's been around since the beginning. And so, but anyway, so bottom line is I've watched everything that's happened, all the council's spin on it, how they've monitored the TIF, how we've had people like you folks that have had input on what they think should occur. And overall, you know, nobody's perfect, but I think they've done a pretty good job of hitting the areas where we've got the boils that need to be lanced. You know, they've done a really good job with managing the TIF, accounting to the TIF, and working with the school districts. I mean, with those meetings, I've been to school board meetings when Bob Carls and I several times attended school board meetings to talk about the impact of the TIF and how we can benefit, you know, the schools. So the schools are all part of this. If the whole community benefits, the school benefits. And so we're just trying to come up with the best plan, maybe not to have that building demolished. And I definitely understand where you guys are coming from. You're saying, my block looks just like it did before. And a lot of ways it does.
And that's okay,
Yeah.
but you gotta understand that people wanna see the benefits, and it's not just for certain areas, or
Right.
it's not just for specific things.
Yeah.
And people have given you a lot of, a lot more than they would had estimated.
Well, as I said, you know,
You know,
this,
I mean, those kinds of things.
this meeting was to bring out some of these issues, put them on
Well,
the
it's a
record
public
as it
hearing
were.
technically as a
Yeah.
condition preceding
Yeah.
to setting the ordinance for
Right.
adoption and approve
Yeah.
the plan. So it's important for the public to ask their questions and to be heard at the hearing and have answers to those questions, to have a full and complete public hearing. And, you know, we've done that. I mean, we're giving everybody the opportunity and, you know, the council notwithstanding, even if you folks were standing there screaming, don't do this, the council can still do this. We've had the public hearing. They have, the elected officials have to make the decision what's good. But it's,
Sure.
but they, listen, I mean, the council listens. That's one thing about your local government, guys. They are, I mean, you don't, Joan, you call a lot of aldermen or contact them fairly regularly. And you probably don't call your congressman as regularly. And so the local people are here.
Locally and work locally.
So, and that's really a
Okay.
lot of truth to that. And these folks are accessible.
But a lot of them don't answer.
If I understand part of what you said, Ed, whatever happens there, you'd like the neighborhood to be consulted, to even give some input on what's gonna happen to that
Sure,
area?
and we understand it's business, and, you don't have control over everything. But much pressure or emphasis and motivation you could put, if it gets to the stage of development, while we're still here, it's not the greatest of times to do these things, we understand that.
Yeah.
But, I think you want public input in all the things that you do. At least here. Are you gonna be able to do everything that the public wants? No. Can you do everything that the public wants? No. But, there's a chance for opportunity, there's also a chance for learning on both sides, whenever you do this, whenever you're studying communication. And that's all that we expect.
I always appreciate the history you guys bring to the council, because a lot of us weren't here when a lot of that stuff started and happened. It's good to know.
What happens when you're over?
Well, thank you for participating and giving us this insight. Is there any other public that would like to make any question or answer? If not, I think we need to move on to get to our regular meeting.
Close the public
We're going to close the public hearing.
I would just, prior to closing, just to remind everyone that the TIF 4 plan is available on the city's website at pontiac.org.
Right. So, okay, we'll close that meeting and we will move right into the regular council meeting.
Pledge.
Barr.
Here.
Giovanini. Here. Eckhoff.
Here.
Callis.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Cowser.
Here.
Bradshaw. Here. Cranford.
Here.
Howard.
Here.
Willie.
Here.
Thank you. Pretty much a full house. I like that. The first meeting of the month is a meeting when we should have called a meeting for the Civic Center Authority. With no business before the Civic Center Authority, we'll adjourn that meeting and go right into our consent agenda. If you've had a chance to peruse those.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Motion by Jamie, seconded by Barb. Roll call, please.
Barr.
Yes.
Giovanini.
Yes.
Eckhoff.
Yes.
Callis.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Cowser.
Yes.
Bradshaw.
Yes.
Cranford.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Willie.
Yes.
Thank you. Since Bob Carl's name was mentioned a few times, if he was still here, we would have a new item on the agenda about Michigan taking Ohio State out in basketball. So, but unfortunately, Bob is at home enjoying the triumph. Let's move on to the regular agenda. The intergovernmental agreement for District 90 cell tower.
Yep, so we've been talking with District 90. They've been building out a CBRS, which is Citizens Broadband Radio Service System. What they're doing is providing broadband to their students in cooperation with 429. They identified the Recplex as being a optimal site for a cell tower to be placed there that would provide broadband service to local students, as well as being able to shoot to the south because the land is relatively flat out there. In those discussions, and you'll see in this ordinance on the back, the proposed location would be over by the equipment shed at the Recplex. It would be completed at the expense of District 429. They already have a tower in storage in Sonneman for it. And for us, our investment would be the cost of about $420, they estimated, a year for electrical service to that tower. In addition, we would be able to place whatever communications equipment that we may need for future use, provided it doesn't interfere with the CBRS system. So with that, we've put together an ordinance to adopt an intergovernmental agreement between the city and 429.
Is it 90?
It's actually 90.
I mean, District 90, I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay.
To allow them to construct, operate, and maintain a communications facility tower at the Recplex.
And on the agreement, I think we should make a small modification. Jim sent this to me, but I didn't catch it in time to get it for the council. But if you look at paragraph 3, it says, in the event District 90 ceases to use the real estate for communication tower or other similar communications use, so that title of the real estate reverts to the city. Well, they're not getting title. The city's still gonna own that. So we're gonna say, quit using it, the use, then District 90 shall remove. And so the title to the communication tower reverts to the city. That'll be removed and simply say, if they cease to use as a tower or communication facility, the District 90 shall remove the communications tower or any other building and equipment and restore the premises. That's acceptable.
Sure. Okay. Any questions from the council? Put forth. We covered this at previous meetings and especially at the committee of the whole, so we'd need a motion to approve with the changes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Scott, seconded by Jamie, to approve ordinance with change. Roll call, please.
Giovanini,
Yes.
Eckhoff.
Yes.
Callis.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Cowser.
Yes.
Bradshaw. Yes. Cranford.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Willie.
Yes.
Barr.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on, I see Adam is here, and he's going to make a presentation on the good that the GLECD does for the community. Adam?
You'll want to turn on that mic too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I appreciate your time this evening to hear an update on economic development. One of wise elected officials said, be thorough, be concise, and be gone. So I'm going to do this pretty quick, but I'll leave time for question and answer of any of you. Maybe if you want to take a look at the handout that I provided, should be in front of each of you. I'll go through the slides relatively quick and we'll take them slide by slide. So the first one is the GLC EDC overview. Just to give you a little background about our organization, if you want to sum up our purpose in one sentence, it's to work with businesses and the public sector to increase commerce and economic opportunity. Right now, we're at 69 members. That's in the first column there on the left, and we break it out by public sector and private sector. So not only is the city and the county a member, but 429 and District 90 are members, Flanagan, Cornell, Prairie Central Schools, Heartland College is a member. So we have other public sector involvement beyond the city and the county as well. Our executive committee consists of 10 members and our board of directors 24. Later in the presentation, we'll go through the dollars that we've put out into the community. And if you take a look, it says Livingston County Board FY 2025 appropriation. The county board has appropriated $742,173 to the Economic Development Council. That is not for operating expenses. That is for our grant programs. And I want to take a moment so you understand where that money comes from. It's not from property tax and it's not from sales tax. Back when the wind turbines were erected in the early 2000s, the county charged a building permit fee of $40,000 per turbine to the wind company. And so it's that money from the county's building permit wind turbine revenue that they have appropriated in their budget back to community enhancement. So if the sheriff asks for walkie-talkies or a drug-sniffing dog or training or, that's where the county goes for those dollars. That's where the economic development dollars come from that we give to Anthony Liftgates and ATR and Wally's, et cetera. So I'll touch on that, but I thought it was important for you to understand where our funding, not operational funding, that's from our dues, but where our grant funding comes from. Of the top 20 private sector employers, they're responsible for a little over 4,400 jobs in the county, and you can see that 65% of those businesses are members of ours and half serve on our board of directors, so we have pretty good representation. Just at a high level, the next slide, Livingston County unemployment rate. You can see there in 2024, we're at 3.8%. The state's at 5.2. What that tells us is really most people who want to work are working. There's a technical term called full employment. It's pretty tight here. We're at full employment. People can find work very easily. We have more positions out there available than we do people seeking those positions. Go over to the next slide, or the next page rather, and that shows you how we compare with the neighboring counties. So you see Woodford, McLean, Grundy, Ford, LaSalle, Kankakee, Livingston. I thought you may just like to see how their unemployment rate compares. You see Livingston County right there, only beat by 1/10 Woodford at 3.7. We're at 3.8. Everybody else's unemployment rate's a little bit higher, and the state, of course, at 5.2. So that means there's a real tight job market here. Economic incentive grant. The GLC EDC has a program where if an employer is hiring 10 jobs or more, and it's a full-time position at a wage of $34,128, or $148 rather, we will provide an incentive of $5,000 per job. So that's $50,000 or more at $5,000 per job. Anthony Liftgates, ATR, and Wally's have received those incentives from the GLC EDC. Collectively, that amount is $327,000. In terms of new jobs created among those businesses, 172, and they retained 112. The capital investment, new dollars spent on their buildings, $16,500,000, inclusive of Wally's, the additions at Anthony Liftgates and ATR. Cumulative square footage there just under 500,000. And if you take an average wage of $40,000 multiplied by the number of employees at those organizations, that's where we got the impacted employee wages of $9,920,000. On the property tax abatement, we did not double count here. We already created or accounted for the jobs created by Anthony Liftgates. Their abatement was just for the new square footage, so they continued to pay their property tax on the existing building. We abated the parking lot and the new building, building addition to the east and the new building in the back. Going on a little bit further, building improvement grant, you can see the different businesses that have received that building improvement grant. Collectively, these businesses invested over $383,000, created full-time equivalents of 7 new positions, retention 37, cumulative square footage over 15,000 square feet. On the next slide, economic enhancement and economic stimulus grant. This is for not-for-profit organizations that have a tie to economic development. If we see a not-for-profit out there that is doing something to improve the workforce, whether it's employee training, for example, there at the Livingston Area Career Center, we gave them $9,159 for 3D printers, computers, other a lathe out there, and so we wanted to make sure that the students had 3D printers so they could do design work. They see a lot of that out in the workforce today. We wanted to make sure it was a request from the Livingston Area Career Center. They were working with local employers on curriculum development and enhancement, so we did that. The Boys and Girls Club has a robotics program. They send students not only throughout Illinois but throughout the country to national robotics competitions. They learned how to build a robot, how to program the robot, how to have it do certain tasks. Today in manufacturing, it's not really the brawn, it's intellectual horsepower. You go to a business and welding is done on plasma cutters with an X and Y axis, and you're programming coordinates on machines today. And so we supported the Boys and Girls Club in their robotics program. And you can see those grants listed there. Educational enhancement. This was called STEAM, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. As I said, our school districts, both 429 and 90, are members of ours and serve on our board of directors. The county and the GLC EDC came up with a STEM, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math program. It's for the purchase of lab equipment, curriculum development, and professional development. We have $50 per student K through 8 and $75 per student in grades 9 through 12 for STEM educational enhancement. So 429 and the LACC receive funding for that from us that they applied for. Looking at going forward, the last slide here, in 2024 and beyond, we want to continue to work with the City of Pontiac, both staff and council, to bolster the housing market. Has been a special opportunity. We're invited to serve on the Housing Committee. We've made some introductions to the Central Illinois Land Bank and North Central Illinois Council of Governments for some additional housing assistance and resources that are available, specifically to help with procuring grant money after the City Council completes their study, ways in which to be more effective in obtaining grants. Working on building code review here in the Central Business District to say how can we increase the likelihood of development of housing on the second floor buildings, and recruiting developers, not only in the Central Business District, but in the new TIF area and in the Greenfield area out on 116. So, and anything else the City Council would like to suggest. All of our programs really have been driven from our members and community leaders, so I'm open to your suggestions. I'd just like to show, I mentioned about recruiting developers to the area. There's a map that's put before you that we created. I'm sure many of you have been in the council room where you see a aerial photograph from the black and white days that the city's changed quite a bit since then. And so I thought it was important to have an aerial exhibit that identifies the property owners. This is what I would call greenfield development opportunities out in the 116 corridor. So we identified property owners. We worked with Corey Robinson at Illinois American, Brian Verdon here at the city to identify where are your utilities, sewer and water utilities. So right on the spot you can say, yeah, there's a 6-inch or a 12-inch sanitary sewer main or a water line. Here's where the parcels are. Here's the size of the parcel. Here's the landowners that we've started to talk to try to tee things up on development. And this map is a real helpful tool. It's not, well, I'll get back to you to tell you next week where the sewer and water are and how quick you can be served. Take it to a meeting and you've got that right there. So that's something new that we didn't have. And, the last page handout I would share with you, it looks like this. There's some yellow on it. And one thing that I think is important is to be good stewards of the public dollar and be transparent and be able to immediately identify where the dollars are going from the GLC back into the community. And so really what this exhibit does is on one sheet of paper I took over the last handful of years here. I think this is 8. And if you look across the top, the columns are titled. Here's the business that's received the assistance, the date they were approved, the amount that's been dispersed, the number of full-time jobs that business created, the number of jobs they retained, the square footage, and the capital investment. So to sum things up on one sheet of paper, and this excludes the Caterpillar incentive that we did back in 2015, which I think was very successful. Excluding that, we've got 400, if you look down in the bottom, grand total. The GLC EDC has put back, just in the city of Pontiac, nearly $500,000, $495,684. Those businesses have created 184 new jobs, 458 retained, for a total of touching 642 jobs in the community. Over 500,000 square feet of development those businesses have enhanced, and those businesses have invested over $17 million. You see $17,883,000 back in the community. And when you look at district-wide, the LACC touches 348 students, and Pontiac 429, 1141. So every dollar is counted and accounted for and measured. And when you take a look at the city's membership in our organization is $23,862 a year. If you take that number over the number of years on this sheet, for every $1 the city council invests in the GLC EDC, $2.60 come back to the city. So we're taking that money from the wind turbines that they paid in building permit fees a number of years ago, and we're putting it back into the schools and the local businesses. So that's really not I think that's a pretty good investment from the city's perspective if they can pay $1 in dues and get $2.60 back to the city. In the green folder that you have, the first page, I think the city is probably most concerned with what we're doing here in the city, but the first page of the green folder shows all the businesses that we've touched countywide. So I'll take any questions anybody has about anything that I've touched on. Yes, Ms. Bradshaw. Yeah, I think maybe I would volunteer Mr. Wolford's packet to you, and I can give him one tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Funny that you brought up the Caterpillar thing, because I was sitting here thinking, how many years ago was that? Because I remember it. Is it ongoing, or has that abatement expired? I don't recall
Sure.
there was a time specification on it.
There was. So it was approved in 2016, I believe, Kelly. It was 5 years, so we've been now several years without it. I'll tell you this, when we did the deal, the building is 980,000 square feet. There was a third of the building where they did not turn the lights on, and it was cold. They had 550 people out there. They had about 420 CAD employees and 130 Vanaken contract employees. Today they're over 1,000. They're running 3 shifts. They've brought in over 900 pieces of equipment in that 300,000 square feet, and it's 100% capacity. I mean, that, they held up their end of the bargain. The city, the schools, the county came on board in record time. It was just great. They've doubled their employee count out there. So thank you again for the city's cooperation and leadership with that.
As Adam noted in his thing about the housing committee, I think right now, in the direction that we've been working on in the housing committee, if we didn't have Adam on board, his value to the committee and the network of people that he can attach us to is going to help us invaluably. We can't afford to hire a person to do this job, so this is the perfect thing that we just pay dues and he can do a lot for us. We probably aren't using him enough for things, maybe.
I was impressed by the STEM program. That's pretty impressive, too.
Thank you. Yeah, we got that started with Brian Dukes, and really it was a bridge. What we required of the schools is we said, hey, we'll give you this one-time shot so you can implement it and start it sooner, but you got to carry on the programming and build it in your budget so it's not just 1 year and gone. And the schools have been very good about doing that.
Well, Adam, you're giving us a nice spiel and a good presentation. And I heard the 4 Ds or 3 Ds, so I think you've done a good job of speeding it along. I guess it comes down to, at this point, we need to approve your request for funding.
I will make a motion that we pay the invoice presented to us.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Kelly, seconded by Scott. Roll call, please.
Eckhoff?
Yes.
Callis?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Hauser?
Yes.
Bradshaw?
Yes.
Cranford?
Yes.
Howard? Yes. Willie?
Yes.
Barr?
Yes.
Jovanini?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. And thank you for your assistance on the housing program. Okay, moving along. Centennial Plaza Boundary Survey. I think Brian is going to come up and give us some new details.
Yes, we had a topographic survey done. As you know, this project is trying to be completed in time for the 100th anniversary of Route 66. So we're trying to get these done a little bit maybe different here. So we got some pieces here. So this is the boundary survey. This will show exactly where the property lines are, what the city owns, where are alleys and easements and those type of things. So the topographic is done, but this is for the boundary. I know Alan's going to be working on a title commitment to see, to get some information so that we will work with Farnsworth on this. But to move forward with this project, I would recommend approval of the Farnsworth Group to do the boundary survey for this project.
I would motion that we take the next step.
Second.
Okay. Oh, I think there's a lot of people who'd like to see it. Motion by Kelly, seconded by John Willie. Roll call, please.
Callis?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Hauser?
Yes.
Bradshaw?
Yes.
Cranford?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Willie?
Yes.
Barr?
Yes.
Jovanini?
Yes.
Eckhoff?
Yes.
Thank you, Brian. While you're up there, moving on to the infrastructure program.
Yes, we've talked about this multiple times now in different meetings, and I believe in your packet is the 5-year capital improvement plan. This would include bike paths, sidewalks, streets, sewers, some bridge improvements. So it's a fairly comprehensive plan on the items in our right-of-way. It's over a 5-year period. A little over $21 million is budgeted, so it's quite a bit of work. And I think we've had a good chance to look at this. I don't know if there's any other questions, but we would be looking for approval of this so we could move forward and start doing the design, especially for next year on some of these items, and to go forward for some of the funding that would be available for next year outside of the city's funding, but from IDOT.
And over the course of this time, there will be changes, obviously. but this gives us the basis to set our priorities, so.
You had mentioned last week about planning for what FAU road we would do. Is that part of what?
Yes, this is in here. It is listed as Water Street from Elm to Pearl, and then Pearl Street from Water to Howard. So that is the one
Okay.
that's in this plan.
So, but it's not next year.
It is not next
yeah.
year. I think it's fiscal year
Yeah,
'29.
okay.
So the way it works is, unlike motor fuel tax, with motor fuel tax, we have the money in our account that's
Right.
given to us. Our FAU dollars are allotted to us, but we do not have those dollars. So we have to request those, and it's a multi-year process. Number one, to request because they have a certain amount of dollars every year, but maybe more projects than what dollars are for. So they have to fit those in. The other thing is, because it's federal dollars, it's about a 3-year process for us to get the paperwork, to do the environmental studies, to do the designs, and to get approval through Springfield and through the federal Department of Transportation.
How has the street rating system that we employed come into play in your decision-making?
So now that we have that, it's been a great tool because we can quickly see visually when we look at our map, the reds and the oranges, the yellows, and the greens, and we know that that's the stuff we don't need to really focus on. We can also export that to spreadsheets and do searches for those. So it's been a great tool. It really has.
The streets in the southeast corner of Ward 1 are probably in the worst shape of any streets in town. How can you rebuild those? It looks to me like when I ride them or drive them, that let me backtrack a little bit. We solved the problem like that on a couple of years ago. West Madison, we built up the side where the garbage trucks were breaking it down. Looks to me like the overlay in that area is so thin that when the trucks go down there, they're breaking down the sides, and you take a chunk out and you've got a pothole and a bigger pothole and a bigger pothole. When you design those, what can you do to eliminate that? I mean, everybody's going to everybody will have their garbage picked up.
Sure. A lot of the streets in that neighborhood, and that's not the only neighborhood in town, they're A3. So basically it's just tar and chip, and they build that up in multiple layers. So it is a thin layer. And you have to have the base to be in good shape, so adequate drainage, good base. And a lot of those streets, that's exactly what happens. They become narrower and narrower every year because those edges start to break. And we have a lot of drainage issues. A lot of times what happens in those neighborhoods is the residents, without curb and gutter, they will park off to the side. And I know Chris's guys have gone down. People will ask for stone to be put in. We have to take stone out because it doesn't drain. So there's different things that go on in those neighborhoods all the time. One thing we can do is reseal them. Now that doesn't get rid of any imperfections, rutting, any of that type of stuff, but it reseals them, makes them last a little bit longer. We just completed a couple weeks ago on Errol Street down in that neighborhood. It was a 2 1/4 inch overlay, so it's a 3/4 inch binder and then 1.5 inch surface on top of that. So we've got 2 1/4 inches on top of what's there. When we want to widen that a little bit, we can take a milling machine and mill that out, put new stone in, compact that to give that a good base. Nothing's going to last forever, and some of that we kind of, you weigh your options. You know, you can do a reconstruction, but those are extremely costly. We can't do that everywhere. So when we have the A3, we try and do an overlay to get a longer service life out of it.
Well, like on West Madison, where we built up the sides and where the heavy trucks, garbage trucks, and whatever travel, that seems to be holding up very well. I don't know if you can do something like that down there, in that area.
Well, we can, it's just a matter of which streets we get to. So, so that's really kind of where we are with it. I think it was 2 years ago, we did, a street down in that neighborhood. This year it was Errol Street. So, if you look in the plan, we tried to hit every ward. About $3.5 million per ward is probably a somewhat close. I know there's one ward that gets over $6 million. I think that's Ward 4, and that has to do with the extensive sewer separation. So sewer separation is included in this too, so that's a little bit out of balance, but that's where the sewers need separated. We don't have a lot of options with that. And we didn't want to do the sewer separation, but because we're spending that money, ignore the streets. So got a little bit out of balance there, but it's just a question, like Kelly brought up, our rating system. So we look at that, and you are right, by definition on the rating system, all those streets down basically from Water Street south is a 1, if not a 2 rating. And by the type of material, an A3 street, a 5 is the best rating it can be. If it's a brand new A3, it's a 5. That's it. Concrete or asphalt can be 10s. So it's just the level of service on an A3 is not as high as asphalt or concrete.
Is the wet ground down there a feature that gives you a problem with it too?
Anytime you have wet
stays
ground,
wet
whether
down
it's poor drainage or the soils, you're going to have some problems, because what happens is the saturation, if the soil does get saturated and then the tire load on that, it just moves the soil particles, and then your base really has an issue. There are some things we can do with that. We can do some under drain. So if we're in a reconstruction situation, we did that on Bailey a few years ago. There were some wet soils, so we did a perforated under drain and tied that into our storm sewer system, and that's been holding up really well.
If our revenues improve, we can always add to this list.
We can.
Question mark?
It is. So
If time allows.
right. So we took about $2 million from the 1 cent sales tax. That's added into the approximately $450,000 in motor fuel tax that we have, and the FAU dollars are about $212,000 per year, with about $1 million already allocated to us. So you take all those things in, if Adam and the rest of the community get our economic development up, then the taxes will be up, and then our revenue will be up, and then we can do more. So, we can hope that we do that. And the numbers, Jim and I talked about that. We kind of see what the schools have received from their 1 cent, and that's kind of how we came up with those dollars.
Well, I've read through the program this year and last year. We've made improvements. We have a lot of work ahead of us and a lot of dollars, but we do need to know that it will change as we go along. As things develop, we will modify the plan. But I think we need to go ahead and get this program approved and use it as our base to move on. So we'll take a motion to do that.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Motion by Kelly, seconded by John Willie. Again. Roll call, please.
Lee,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Bradshaw.
Yes.
Cranford,
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Giovanini,
Yes.
Eckhoff,
Yes.
Callis.
Yes.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks to everybody that helped you put this together. Moving along, Fire Department Safer Grant. Jake is up to the podium. Lead us away.
All right. Good evening, Council. Last week, I met with most of you at the Committee of the Whole meeting to discuss the opportunity to reapply for the Federal Safer Grant. For those of you who do not remember, the Federal Safer Grant is an opportunity where the federal government will pay for firefighter staffing. They'll pay for all the salary and benefits for up to 3 years. There is no matching grant required by a municipality or a fire district when you apply for this grant. Back in August of '23, we did apply for this grant. Unfortunately, we did not receive it this year, but we do have the opportunity to reapply. Through my connections at the Congresswoman Kelly's office, their grant writer gave me a contact at FEMA to discuss our previous grant application, and I was able to find out that we did score very well on it. In fact, well enough that we had the potential to receive the grant, but unfortunately the federal government ran out of money by the time they got to our application. So they highly suggested that we reapply for it. We had this discussion at the committee of whole meeting, and those that were present, I did receive positive feedback to look into seeking approval to reapply for this grant. Just like last time when we reapplied, this grant is good for 3 years. By the time the grant money is up, we would have an opportunity to retain this individual that we would hire. And at that point in time, the council would decide if we want to keep the extra staffing or would use it to replace one of the individuals that will be retiring during that time. So tonight I come before council to answer any questions you have about the federal grant and also to seek approval to reapply for the grant.
We covered it at the committee of the whole pretty well. I don't know if I have any other questions.
I'd make a motion to approve.
I second.
Motion by Scott, seconded by Barb. Roll call, please.
Hauser,
Yes.
Bradshaw.
Yes.
Cranford,
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Willie.
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Giovanini,
Yes.
Eckhoff.
Yes.
Callis.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it. Moving on, we have ordinance for the LSI subdivision. I think Alan has some insight for us.
Well, the ordinance was on the, mine was outside the packet because of the timing. The LSI subdivision, and Dan is here that can talk about it too. I think Jim has the big drawing, which is that in is that in the final form, Jim? It's in final form, it's got the hash mark and stuff. Okay, so what LSI bought that strip of ground along the railroad right-of-way out behind the old Edward Soil Service and Westchester Lumber, and they came to the city wanting to divide that tract into 2 lots, and as that proposal was being reviewed, we determined that there was some ambiguity regarding city streets in that area. If you know, Prairie Street and Court Street intersection terminated inside the lot area, and we didn't find a dedicated right-of-way yet, although I do still have a pending title search. It's going to be irrelevant after that. And then we also, where it looks like Court Street determines and goes on over to North Street, I think. That kind of goes through almost the middle of what they wanted to be Lot 2. And again, we look at the original plat of Phil's first edition, and it's ambiguous whether there's actual street right-of-way there. And their surveyor, their engineer that did this development prepared an ALTA survey, and an ALTA survey requires significant investigation, and they determined that there was no dedicated right-of-way. Now, obviously, it's been used for decades, so they probably can't close it without our permission, because of that. But talking at the first zoning meeting we had, this issue came up, and we did not have a resolution, so we tabled it. And then during the time between the tabled one and the rescheduled meeting, I think it was 25th, we looked at our options, talked about, that what looks like the extension of Court Street, and determined that as long as those residents on lots 1, 2, and 3 of Block 6 of Fells Addition could get to their houses, to get to their backyards, there's a driveway on one that drives in and they park on it, and there's also a garage right next to that driveway that has access. So lots 2 and 3 both utilize it. Lot 1 is on the corner of, there with North, so they have access. anyway, the solution we came up with is that maintaining that street was not a super high priority for the city because of its condition and just what Brian's been talking about, what it would cost to maintain that over the years. If you've looked at that street, it's gonna be a one or less, half, maybe a half, I don't know.
It's just gravel.
It's
It's like
really
a
bad.
farm driveway.
Yeah, so, and people drive it, and then when they sell, if they sell lot 2, you know, the owner of that probably is gonna end up using that as a driveway, but we said we've got to absolutely guarantee that those property owners had access and not necessarily using this, what appears to be a street. So we requested that LSI provide a 20-foot easement across on that end of the lots for those properties, the back of those lots on lots 1, 2, and 3, so that they would have access if a new owner decided to close that off somehow. We don't know who the new owner is going to be. They may leave it open and get the access now, but if they do decide to block off all or part of it, that would be a guaranteed easement for the benefit of those lots. And then with respect to the Prairie Street Court Street intersection, we had originally suggested a 90-degree triangle with 90-degree corners, and upon close evaluation of the Alta survey, our right-of-way would have extended into the building. So we came back with a curved right-of-way, so that hash-marked area that's on the plat up there and on the back of your ordinance is going to be dedicated as public street right-of-way to the city when this is recorded, so we can maintain Court and Prairie Street intersection. It'll be our right-of-way to maintain. So that takes a little notch out of both Lot 1 and Lot 2. And then during the course of our discussions, one of the prospective persons that was interested in it indicated that to Greg that they might, on that little hanging down part that goes into the lots, lots 4 and 5, that's designated as Lot 3 on your property, that they might build, that developer said they might build a duplex or a house on that. And while we were having the discussion, I said, there used to be parking for Edward Soil Service over there. It's still got gravel and grown up in weeds and stuff now. But I said, you know, if there's any chance of that, I would suggest you make that little section a separate lot. It's plenty large to meet the city requirements, has all this water, sewer, electric, it has all the public improvements there. And then if an owner did want to build that, they could build it on a separate lot. It could be sold, whatever they wanted to do with it. So the ordinance you have and the plat you have attached is to develop that property into 3 lots. The dividing line didn't change between lots 1 and 2, and it's basically, lot 2 is basically mostly Edward soil, right?
Yes.
Okay, and, or nutrient, I guess, for the people that haven't been around as long. And that's got buildings on it, which is assuming some business is going to buy for their use there, and it's something LSI apparently doesn't need for their business.
Correct.
And it would, and I think LSI is planning to keep lot 1 for their business, right?
Yes, yes.
And then, so lot 2 and 3 are gonna be on the market for sale, and hopefully developed and improved and increase the tax revenue. So, the ordinance would waive the final plat, acknowledge all the public improvements are there, that we weren't gonna require any other new sidewalk, street lighting, or anything, and would approve that plat with the dedicated right-of-way and a dedicated easement there. And I want to add a footnote, if we approve this, there could be a small modification to this plat you're approving, because I did suggest possibly on Lot 3, put at least on one side or one of the property lines, some kind of utility easement. Then I emailed, and then Dan, I missed connections today on the phone to talk about it. So that we would, it would be an upgrade, and we would go ahead, if you approve it as, approve it as substantially as it is, and as Jim and I approve it, that would be good. So
I did speak with the engineer on the easement for the utilities. He just requested, he wasn't sure what the required width was. easement requirements for utilities
What
were.
would we do, Brian, 10, 15?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen 10 as a minimum, 15.
Okay, good.
And
I can relay
there's no
that
negative,
message
it
to
doesn't
them.
affect their setbacks or their building area.
Right.
But it does if someone's gonna bring in like a fiber optic line or a MediaCom line, gives it a place to go without talking to your neighbor.
Got it,
So,
yeah.
that's a good deal.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much.
So, Alan, you were talking about that part of Lot 3 that is closest to Prairie Street would be the better place for them to improve if they were gonna put a duplex?
Okay.
You were talking about this space.
This is lot 3. It was originally part of lot 2. So lot 2 would have been this and this. Now it's gonna be a dividing line there.
Well, my question is if they were gonna put a duplex.
It would be on, it would be on lot 3.
Okay, and so that would, so once they do that, would we be required to put sidewalks in that?
Okay.
Well, that's gonna be an issue of whether, I mean, we could have required sidewalks for any subdivision, whether it was gonna be part of lot 2
I
or
was thinking we
lot
could have.
3.
Because that'll start, I mean, if they start a duplex there, that'll start.
And I don't know where I don't remember where the sidewalks start and stop.
That was only a
Sidewalk-
lot here.
Is there a sidewalk from the street up to the line? Is there already a sidewalk on lot 5?
Likely.
So would it go anywhere if they build a sidewalk along there? And this thing,
Well,
if
it
you
would
notice this
give
thing,
access to the main street.
it would if it went all the way down, but is there a sidewalk from here to here? Do we know?
No, probably.
So if we built one here, it wouldn't go anywhere. Wouldn't make it to the street.
We
You
would-
know, you could, I mean,
We
you
would
could
require to.
ask the property owner whether they would agree, or we don't have to waive it. That'd be, apparently, there's already lighting and
It
stuff.
looks like
that
there's
the only
already
thing you
a
really waive.
sidewalk there.
There's
I'm
a
looking at
sidewalk
Google.
Is there?
Yeah, there's a sidewalk there
You could require. you
on
know,
that lot.
Okay,
as- Instead of waiving all the
I was
improvements,
wondering about
suggest they
Yep.
put that side. Would that be a huge objection to put, I don't know, 90 feet or whatever it is? I can't read the little one.
How is that zone, Ellen?
What's the zone?
It's R4.
R4? Okay.
Lot 3 is R4, yes.
So it would be suitable for duplex type of development.
Sounds like a good deal.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't on the council, but I know enough about it. Dan Cook.
Yep. Thanks, Dan.
It's the end of the life of Dan Cook. and
I'm not sure what they're gonna turn down. Yeah, I'm not sure what they're gonna turn down, what they're gonna keep.
Waiting for somebody to object.
Right.
The sidewalk? But there's one there. Well, it
Yes.
looks to me like it does.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's already there.
It's there, she
Yeah.
just,
So just one,
mapped it.
as long as you're there,
I didn't know there was.
the residents that are back there, is anybody, were there garages or anything back in here that, up
They're over
towards
there
that?
by
Yeah,
Yeah, there was.
They were,
There's
one
a
of the
duplex
owners,
up there.
one of the owners was at the first zoning board and the other owner was at the second zoning
Lot
board.
right here, they have a garage right here.
okay.
There's a drive that runs this way that these people use to get to their garage and they use the park as well, so.
But they'll still have access once you.
Yeah, they'll still have access with what we've done. If they shut off the drive, they would still have that easement access. Somebody might have to put some gravel on it, but they'd have access. The property owner that had the garage was at the first meeting, and the property owner that has the driveway was at the second meeting, right? And the property owner with the driveway, which had the furthest to go, I believe thought it was a good solution to protect him. I think he was pleased, wasn't he? Mr. Deal?
Yeah. He was worried about the parking behind the
So-
duplex.
So I think it's a good program. Very, very likely, nothing's gonna change. They're probably just going to do it. They may, Dan said there was some discussion of maybe blocking that, what looks like Court Street down to that intersection line with the hash marks, so it wouldn't be through, people couldn't drive through and through. But then the access to that lot 2 would be the North Street property, and they're not gonna wanna block off their own access probably. Right. And theoretically, they could tell the property owners that have the easement not to use it anymore. Pretty hard to stop if it's sitting there, but, you know.
Yeah.
If they're good neighbors, it'll probably, we've just given them an insurance policy.
Our main intent is to sell those just to sell that lot, because we're not currently using it. While we have it, we probably wouldn't do anything additional to it, as far as fencing or anything like that.
And it's another one of those, we don't know who the buyer is gonna be, or what their use is gonna be, or how this might change. You know, we don't know how it's gonna impact them. If they want to put more buildings on there, or expand the existing buildings, you know, they may have to move their total access down towards that line, towards those lot lines, which would also work. The easement's still there. It's not gonna have, as long as it's open so those property owners can get there, doesn't say lot 2 can't use it. It just means you can't take it away from these lots. I keep saying south because it's up and down, but if you notice, the compass is angular.
Yeah.
So the directions are kind of tough.
The railroad. So what do you need from us?
Just need a motion to pass the ordinance.
Right.
I'd make a motion to ordinance 032.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Mike Barr, seconded by Jason. Roll call, please.
Bradshaw,
Yes.
Cranford,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Joe Vanini,
Yes.
Echo,
Yes.
Callis.
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Cowser.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then now, going out, Dan, the next step in the process is for your engineer to get the final version of the plat, the signing version, so they can be circulated for signatures. And then we'll get a certified copy of the ordinance, and we'll need those plats, and either we can give it to you to record, or we can record it and bill you for the recording cost.
That's
It
fine.
needs to be recorded so this lot is official. And then after that's recorded, the title company should insure it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Full speed ahead,
All right,
Dan.
thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. We have golf course rates for 2025. I see Shannon's coming up with some new ideas. Fire away, Shannon.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight to discuss the price increases at the golf course for
2025 season. As some or all of you may know, last year we increased the daily fees across the board for all our dynamic pricing, and that seemed to go over very, very well. We had a really good increase in the daily fees. So this year, as a marketing tool, we propose to leave the daily rates mostly alone, as we have increased daily play and hope to continue to capitalize on enticing more new daily players who will then eventually convert to season pass holders. We'll continue to market on the radio like we've done in the past, which that seems to get us return daily play as well. But the main focus this year is to increase the golf passes across the board. When the city took over in 21, we actually decreased the season passes, both single family, all of them were lowered in 21, and they've pretty much stayed there the last 4 years. And with the cost of labor and just the increase in expenses going on, we feel like now is as good a time as any to kind of increase those prices. Now, I didn't take this lightly. There should be 3 pieces of information in front of everybody. If we could look at the sheet that compares our previous pricing to local and surrounding golf courses. As you can probably see, we're kind of on the lower end of that spectrum. Now, I wouldn't want to go directly to the highest end of that spectrum. I would think more middle to middle upper. But also looking at those numbers, we felt that as a city-run golf course, local residents should get a small break in price. Therefore, we're kind of recommending that we do a resident rate versus a non-resident rate going forward. Now, the other 2 sheets, one of them is the pricing from last year, and the other is going to be our suggested prices for 25. As you can see, for example, we're wanting to increase the single pass $50 for local residents and $125 for non-residents. Though you'll see similar increases in the family, pass as well as the weekday pass. And as far as golf cart passes go, we're looking to increase the golf cart pass across the board on all passes related to the carts. Not only that, but we'd also like to increase the personal cart fee as well as the trail fee as well. Probably just not at the rate we will the regular golf carts. I feel these changes are in line with the rest of the courses in our area and kind of should help offset the increased expenses going into 2025, such as the new golf cart lease and other things like that. But still keep us, not price ourselves out of the market per se. As for the daily fees, like I said, we increased them across the board last spring and we saw great results. So I feel there's no real need to do another full-scale increase across the board on those. The only ones I really see are the afternoon, and the after 5, Friday through Sunday, and I just suggest we increase those by $5 for each time frame. Because we want to increase prices, but we want to leave ourselves room for in the future so that as expenses get more and we need to kind of work around, we don't want to have to raise them so high that our numbers fade and we end up having to lower the price in 2 years or something like that. Like, I think my suggestion would be more incremental increases to our membership over the next few years and kind of just adjust as we need to and from what we're seeing as far as revenues and expenses go. As far as for this year's price increases, that's pretty much the only increases that we kind of saw. So now I'll kind of leave it up to questions and we'll go from there.
Do you keep a running tally of residents and non-residents?
I don't have it right in front of me now, but yeah, we do. That's right at the rec center.
Do you know what the percentage is offhand?
I don't. I know it's heavily favored in our residents as far as there's more city of Pontiac people than there are outside residents, but I know there's a multitude of non-city / Odell / Bloomington.
Do you mean
those type of places.
daily play or memberships?
Both.
There's a ton of daily play that does not come from Pontiac. I would say, like I said, I can get those numbers to you, but I'd probably say it's 70-30, 60-40 in town to out of town. We get plenty of play from Bloomington, Fairbury, between reciprocals that we have and just where we kind of have our price at right now.
Do you have non-resident regulars?
Yes. I'll have non-resident family and single members next year.
So can you adjust this to regulars so that you can give them a break because they're being regulars?
Oh, you mean like non-pass holders?
Right.
Well, that's kind of the dynamic pricing of it, right? So if they wanted a discount, they play later in the.
But I mean, pass holders also. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. It's
like the people from Bloomington, or the outside ones now.
People that are regulars that come all the time and they don't live in Pontiac.
So if I could, so like a regular, if somebody's coming and paying regular daily rates and you play enough times, then you'd be better off to pay for a season pass. And then that's where, if you're a regular, if I'm a regular out of town player and I play enough, I'll save money by, you'll save.
So I can explain that a little better now. So a lot of our out of town play come not nearly enough time to justify a membership. The ones that come from out of town that would be members, they'll still play quite a bit less than what like you can see on that sheet what they'll play from other places. So those are more the out of towners that come more than say 8 to 10 times. We offer punch cards at the beginning of the year that save them. It makes their rate $27, $28 depending on which punch card they buy.
I guess my thing is I'm wondering about how many people have friends that don't live here that they meet at the golf course and play together.
There's a lot. Just not a lot of them are the same pass.
The guy that lives here is getting a break, and the other guy, they're talking about it. So
sure.
Well, there's a lot of people that buy the punch cards, and
and that's a good thing. I didn't realize, punch card thing.
Yeah, that punch card, we don't do it all season long. We kind of hit it at the holidays and the beginning of the season, and that was a huge hit last year. It went over well the first year, but it kind of caught on last year, so I'm sure we'll continue that.
Okay. How's the bottom line look this year?
I haven't seen the expense part of it yet. The revenue part, it'll speak for itself when we meet for that.
As of right now, it's looking to be about on pace with what it was last year. So we ended up ahead last year. We should end up ahead again this year. At least just from looking at the checking account, we're sitting at the same balance. So
I don't have any objection to the change in the pricing for the pass holders. I would like us to not make any final decision on the daily fees until we see more numbers. I want to see how many people are playing, how many people are playing locally, and what times of the day. We're going to have a minimum wage increase of $1 across the board. So we know we're going to get hit huge with salary or, payroll increases. We've purchased new carts. I just did a quick look the half an hour before I came. Dwight charges $5 more a round than we do already. Ironwood and Bloomington charges $5 more a round than we do already. We're not out of the park, and we need to bring more revenue into our golf course to make improvements and to be able to afford more staff so that we can get things done. And if we just continue to accept, but we don't have any good numbers here. We don't know what we're comparing because I don't know how many players we had. And so I'd like to see more of a breakdown personally. Holiday rates should be the same as the weekend rates. So we should signify that on our list.
Sure, which they are.
We're given a 38% discount to Pontiac residents, on a couple times. That's a pretty big decrease.
Pretty big bite.
That's, 38% off on, that $25 rate. That's a good deal. So,
But that's just one day. Like Mondays are our slowest day of the week. So, that $25 rate is 10 rounds of $25 better than 2 rounds of $40.
Exactly. But I guess I would like us to see more numbers on the daily part. Do we have to set those now?
No,
we're not.
No, I'm just trying to get.
He came to me, and I didn't. This wasn't ready for committee when we had our last committee, and we were wanting to at least move so we had time to get it implemented and put out to the public.
Oh, well,
So,
I think the pass holder things, we have to, those are always going out
and the
soon.
idea was, like, from my perspective, the overall numbers, we looked pretty good. Like, the checking account looked pretty good. And we thought that leaving our rates one more year, we know incrementally those daily rates have to change. But we were hoping to get at least one more year to build and to where people, now have a pretty good idea. We have a public course here and keep building that, and hopefully we're going to turn some more people into season pass holders and then move forward with that. But we can for sure put together, for the daily rate stuff, we can for surely put together some numbers.
Actually, I think what we'd really like to see is the number of plays. How many people played the course.
Sure.
And break it down by several different categories.
Sure.
It'll give us a better perspective to go by.
And also the people who pay season pass holders, we'd like to know how many times they play.
Sure.
That's a good gauge too.
Sure.
How many times they're using that discount.
You can set your membership to that. Like if the average person, or the average pass holder is playing 30 times, it's easier to set the rate there than to,
But we need all those.
But the goal was more for the season pass holders, just because we saw some real benefit last year to getting that out before the first of the year, because like a lot of times in that situation, we're in competition with Wolf Creek, and it's kind of first come, first serve when they see the numbers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When were you planning to put out a mailing?
About the same time we did it last year, as far as that goes. It was the week between Christmas and New Year's.
Well, I think you still have time to put the numbers together for us.
Yeah.
We have a meeting in 2 weeks, so.
A lot of that is just pass holder stuff. If we wanted to move forward with where the pass holder rate is and kind of come back, because we didn't set the daily fees last year until, might have been late February.
Well, I think we would still like to see some numbers, but as
Okay.
far as the pass holders go, I don't think I have any objections at all to the numbers that you put up. As far as the increase, it's minimal as
We
far
can't
as I
go
can
much
see.
more than that anyway. I mean, if,
Yeah.
you know,
So if you're just talking pass holder numbers,
Mm-hmm.
I think we could go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, in the pass holders, one of the main things, we've grown the membership over the last little bit, and
Yeah.
to be honest, a lot of that has to do with where that number was, and I just don't want to scare off
Good.
a lot of those new clientele.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shannon, I see on here personal cart and trail fees. Are those numbers gonna be included, how many people are paying that and how we're enforcing it? Because I know that's
it's not enforced.
it's a controversial thing, and
It is
are we
not
gonna
enforced.
enforce it? You know, how can we enforce it, or what should we do to enforce it? I know Kelly brought it up before, you know, and it was maybe last year when we had this discussion.
We probably have more issue with trail carts than we do personal carts, though, because personal carts are the golfers. Trail carts are, if you don't come to the golf course to play golf, I don't know every golf cart, or we don't know every golf cart that's in the subdivision.
I know, I guess the idea is how you enforce it if you want it, if you're not gonna enforce it to get enough revenue to even have it. Yeah, but I don't get a vote, but I know that, your signs went up and didn't change anything, I don't think, looking out my back window. 'Cause I know who the members are, or I think I have a pretty good idea who the members are, and the carts are,
Well, I think some of the issue lies with people who, and I have my own cart, and I pay for, you know, the rate to ride it. But I choose to pay the higher price so that even if I need to ride a cart that belongs to the golf course, I don't have to pay any extra. And a lot of people don't do that, but they may still choose to ride a golf cart that belongs to the golf course, and they should be paying more for that. Am I correct?
That's true.
And so, but I don't know how we can manage to police that. I mean,
By a sticker, you can't come.
oh, we have a sticker. I mean, but if I say, Bob, we have one cart. So if we're both playing, one of us has to ride a cart that belongs to the golf course. So we choose to pay the higher cart rate so that it doesn't matter what we drive. But if we only paid the personal cart rate, we can only ever ride our own cart. If
So
we
yeah, it would
choose
cost her
to
like,
pay-
it would cost her $17
if
if
we
you,
would choose to ride the, you know, if we were riding a cart that belongs to the course, we're gonna have to pay the full,
$17 if you're playing
$17.
Saturday morning, you know what I mean?
and
Yeah.
that's what doesn't get policed. That part is not probably,
Can we have,
but I don't know how, unless you eliminate the lower rate. It's just, if you have your own cart and you wanna use it, you have to pay the higher rate. That's the
so
way.
if they go in to if they go in to sign in, they can get a cart key even though they're not cart members if they have a personal thing, so it's not being policed?
No, they shouldn't be able to do that.
No, what she's talking about more is say you're a member without a personal cart, and you already have your cart and it's out there, they'll pull their cart up, and they'll park their cart, and then they'll jump in with said person who has a personal cart, or who has a cart key, yeah.
I mean, the way to eliminate that is just not have a reduction.
From the
for a
personal cart to the,
I mean, you just, if you want to use your own cart, you have to pay the higher rate, because I think we have too many people that are, but we also probably have people that are using their personal carts that aren't paying anything.
I would find that
Pretty
hard
sure
to.
that's the case. There's some people that live off of Fairway View that come up Westview Drive.
Oh, he's got it. Well, he pays for it.
Okay. So I don't know. I guess you know.
Yeah, I know you're talking about that. He pays for that. That's he's the second one with the
Talking
sticker.
about, you know, maybe we just hold all the keys and issue the keys as they come in, but it's a key. I mean, you can go get a key made.
Oh, absolutely.
And so
It's
a
just
lot
like
of people are
standard
going to have a
golf.
key anyway. And unless you
People
have
keep
something
the
specific.
One of the big
standing
things we're
there,
going to focus on this
looking at
winter.
What it is you just got to find out whether you're taking a cart or shouldn't have.
Well, the employment of a ranger would benefit us immensely. if we could, that's where increased revenue would help.
Right.
To check receipts and, you know, all those kind of things,
Mhm.
you know.
Can we issue a card to people who have the?
Because one of the main things I want to focus on this winter with the new carts is making sure we know who's using said cart, so that when they come back damaged or abused, or, you know what I mean, we'll have a better idea on who that is and how that goes. You know, because, I mean, eventually if we don't find that, then we have to pay for said fix.
I think where we need to go right now is back to committee on this, and our committee that covers the golf course and parks, everything else, and bring Shannon and Gary into that group and lay out the guidelines that we'd like them to put forth to us.
Mhm.
And I think that would probably get us further along, where we could not take up all the time here tonight with possibles and go into something that would be positive.
Sure.
And bring us into the right number. So we'll need to set up a committee meeting. I think it's, would be, wouldn't this fall under,
Public properties?
public properties, yeah.
public properties.
Yeah. Is that Mike? Who's the
Yeah,
chair?
it's-
Oh,
Yeah, I'm the chair of public property.
you
Yeah.
are, okay.
That's what I said. Mike's the chair, so.
Yeah.
Mike, you can't go out of town for a couple weeks.
As long as it's before February, I'm fine.
Well, why don't we get a
Barb,
date set up
Bradshaw,
and then
Cranford,
get
Jones,
back to the
Dallas.
committee?
Because with this one, we do have a little bit of time.
Right.
If we pass tonight the season pass rates and then committee the rest, we'll have a little bit of
Yeah,
time.
there we go.
And then I can get those numbers easily for the daily fees versus, and how often our members are playing per season pass.
John, you're on that committee too.
It's Barr, Bradshaw, Cranford, Giovanni, Callis.
Yeah, okay. That works out great. We'll get together, Mike, and we'll set up a date and get it out to all the committee members. But at this point, I think all we want to do is approve the season pass rates so he can get his first mailing out. Yes, sir.
Just a thought, if you're approving them tonight, I think you said you usually send them out the week before Christmas and New Year's. If it's possible to go out before Christmas, as
Yeah.
opposed to after Christmas,
Mhm.
if you approve the passes.
Yeah.
That might be good. There's an old saying, nothing happens without a sale, and maybe these could be Christmas
Presents, yeah.
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 Getting it on the 27th.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Oh, that's perfect.
So we'll need a motion to approve the season pass.
I'll
rates.
make a motion, season passes.
Motion by Scott, seconded by Jamie. Roll call, please.
Cranford,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Giovanini,
Yes.
Echo.
Yes.
Callis.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Hauser.
Yes.
Bradshaw.
Yes.
Thanks, Shannon. Okay. Moving on. Employee Christmas gifts.
Yes, as,
Jim.
as following the policy we've done for the last couple of years anyway, of $75 for full-time employees and $50 for part-time employees. You have before you the list of who those personnel are that are employed now. And with that, I would just ask the council to entertain the annual city council's employee Christmas gifts.
Motion by Bill, seconded by Jason. Roll call, please.
Howard,
Yes.
Willie.
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Giovanini,
Yes.
Echo.
Yes.
Callis.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Hauser.
Yes.
Bradshaw. Yes. Cranford.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on, tax levy draft.
Yes, so we talked about this in committee, and you have in front of you a draft of the tax levy. And this draft, it does include, the first part of it is the current budget year, and then the second part is that where the levy is comparison of 2023 to 2024. I can tell you that the changes between now and next council, when I bring it back before you, we did get the actuaries for police and fire pensions after this was created and sent out. And the fire pension went down a bit, but the police pension went up a bit. So ultimately, though, in the long run, we have a little bit more that can be moved around. And in speaking with Lauderback and Amen, I had a couple suggestions on where that goes. We were able to make a little savings, I think, in Social Security as well from what's on here, and make an increase our one of our park maintenance levies. The balance is still in a deficit, and so to increase a little money over in that one as well. So I'll bring it a rework. I will make notes of anything that's different from tonight to then, but this one is a reflection of what you saw in the committee. So there is no action needed,
Final
but you have
draft
it at
to
least
come.
to look at, and then I will put the next one together and I'll get it out ahead of time for you to review it. So next meeting.
You said final draft to come. Okay,
Final draft to come.
all right. Moving along. Mayor's comments. One big one is, if you didn't make it, it was cold on Black Friday. The light up parade was great. Again, want to thank Bob Borman family for their tree. Really fabulous looking tree. And it went really well. It just was cold. And but Liz, Misty, and Hannah, and the entire staff did a great job. Got great response from people for all the trees and everything. Chris and the entire crew back there did tremendous work on all that. It was just a great night, but it was really nice when it was over. So got in, got warmed up. City council comments.
Well, Misty asked me to mention to everybody that she left flyers for tomorrow night's holiday mixer and scavenger hunt kickoff with a flyer on. She's pretty excited about this tomorrow night, so yes, it will probably be cold, but if everybody, could try to get there or at least get out and do the scavenger hunt. There's a lot of good prizes for that, so I'm just giving her plug.
And there will be heaters at the
You don't have to stay long.
yeah, you don't have to stay forever, that kind of thing. Is there a housing
Yes, we have a
Meeting?
meeting tomorrow at 5:30.
5:30, right? Okay. Adam, you heard that, right? Okay, all right.
I have a question for
Scott.
Chris. I feel probably half a dozen people stopping me on the street. Are we gonna do anything for lights down at the Riverside Park?
I hope to.
Okay.
I've got everybody on leave back right now.
Okay.
Maybe later in the week, we'll get down there and put it up.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Plan.
Something else? Administrator,
So we did just talk about that, Riverside Park. Last week, I would like to just make a comment. I want to thank our city engineer and our city superintendent, wastewater treatment plant superintendent, for the work that they've done in this capital improvement plan. There is a lot of thought that goes into it and a lot of consultation with the county, with the council.
and the county.
You should tell I'm just getting over from not being well, so my thoughts, I guess, are a little off. Yeah, but in addition to that, I did want to take this opportunity as well to thank the staff and to thank the council for the Christmas gifts. The staff, without our full and part-time staff, we would really, not be able to provide services. But from our police and fire and public safety and streets, to all the part-time folks we have at the golf course, the rec center, our staff up here, and the staff that helps community enrichment put together all these events.
we're blessed and we're thankful that we have so many people who are willing to give that part-time work for us. So, with that, that's all I have.
Super. Public comments.
I have a question, since we're talking about the golf course. Is the walking path in the golf course marked, and are there hours or time?
There's signage to that, but I'm not sure I would say marked. It's.
I'm sure I call it a walking path.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that probably is a misnomer. Overall, number one, I think it's important for the public to know that it's a golf course, not a park, per se, and that it's dangerous when golfers are out there hitting balls to be out walking around. So ultimately, we've talked a number of times about whether there should be hours, and I think
We did say that holes 10 through 13 should be sunrise to like 9 a.m. I believe.
Right, that's really about the only safe time that people can be out just walking around out there.
In the winter, when the city was going to do by the golf course, they promised that there would be a walking path there that could be used, as well as a few other promises. And I think there's an area designated, but there's no hours specifically. And also, in the winter, when nobody's golfing, that could be cleared for a walking.
Yeah, we could have.
This is something that the city said they were going to do.
I remember that discussion, but I remember it more of a discussion and not really just like
Proposals.
like a promise.
Yeah.
I mean, it might not have been a promise, but it was to the public, and it was that this could be used for this, it could be used for this. It could be
Yeah,
used for this.
logistically-
All of these uses.
logistically,
And there were
pro-
questions asked about the danger, because
Yeah.
obviously, no one wants to be walking when you could be walking with a golf.
Correct.
Oh, some people do.
Well, but it's the same, not with just walking, but we had the same conversation about fishing at the ponds, and there was discussion that we should allow that, and there's the same danger not paying attention and looking at a pond and getting hit with a ball. And then the other logistical issue we've discussed, and why I guess nothing has ever really been finalized, is especially this time of year, and when you get a little bit later and closer to March, there are some days, that you would expect that it would be too cold, but then it's warm enough that they do come out and they'll open. And so to have set days also isn't really ideal to say it's a walking path from this day to this day, and what happens? Do you just say, we just won't open it regardless of the weather? And from the making money standpoint, that doesn't seem like a great idea. So
I think
we
this
need
is
to
a-
keep looking at that, and this is a good issue for me to put on the list for when we have this next.
It was selling it to the public.
Yeah.
It was saying, it's not only for golf, it is for these.
Well, there's been a lot of multi-use out there, there's been a lot of events.
There has, and the downside to it is we've also encountered a lot of why we're where we are today, that there has been some close calls with people just out walking and balls screaming by and that kind of stuff, which made us kind of take pause and say, we might need to relook at this being seen as just a public park type of a venue.
Well, rates,
Well, I
this will be
will-
a nice thing for to add onto the agenda for that committee meeting.
Just a comment
Bring it
about that. I've worked on public golf courses my dad was a Peoria pro. I have never heard of, a golf course is a pretty fragile environment. You have a hard time with people with golf carts, stay 30, 40 feet off the greens. You're hitting your ball, correct? I mean, the tee boxes, that's a lot of work. And you just get people up walking around, tearing it up, kids playing on it. That's a lot of money. We have a lot of parks in Pontiac. There's more parks in Pontiac than we can use. I walk them and they're empty. I don't know if I'm just saying, it's a lot of, there's more risk, cost, and damage to inviting people out just to run around on the golf course.
It's not running around with a golf course, it was supposed to be part of the path.
Yeah.
Was a
Yeah, it'll turn out to people running around.
Paths in the parks here,
There's a ton.
not walking paths, not accessible.
There's a lot of sidewalks and different things that we have to look
They
at,
go
but,
to nowhere in some of them.
well, yeah, they circle, yeah. All right, anything, no other comments with anything? Then we have a motion to adjourn by Frank and Bill Callis. We are adjourned.
So how's Kathy doing?